and welcome to QuadCast. I'm Lewis, and today I'm joined by John Fletcher, the Managing Director here at AlphaQuad. John, it's lovely to have you on. Thanks so much for being here.
Hi Lewis, thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Thanks so much for joining us. So John, I've got a series of questions to ask you today. This is, for those listening, this is the first episode that we're going to be releasing. This is very, very exciting. And we wanted to start off with the most sort of contextual information that we could possibly give you that will be arguably the most interesting. So John, I just wanted to first ask you, can you share the story behind AlphaQuad's founding?
Yes. So many years ago, my first career was as a teacher. I left university with a degree in psychology and not really understanding what to do with it. I took the option to have an extra year of grant, and so I went down to Weymouth for teacher training, and long story short, got qualified, got a job as a teacher, and stayed as a teacher for 16 years, which was absolutely wonderful. Thoroughly enjoyed it. They bulldozed the school I taught in now. I don't know what you read into that. But I worked with wonderful colleagues. I had fantastic children I taught, and it was really good. But when you do something over and over again, it can lose its luster over time. So 60 years in, I was starting to approach teaching the children of children I had taught, and I thought it was time to make a move. At the time, fortunately, I had become a teacher of IT. I ran the IT department there, and so I was exposed to this wonderful new thing called the World Wide Web, which everybody was excited about at the time. We did lots of work. We delivered the national curriculum on the subject through use of web design tools, and so it became a natural progression to think about, okay, well, can I earn some money out of this? So again, very long story short here, I became involved with someone else who sold inkjet paper and cartridges. And we had a deal together whereby I wrote a website for him and he did all the selling and choosing of stock, and we had a fun time selling inkjet paper and cartridges both on and offline. That particular website was one that was spotted by someone I was working with, the MD of a company that produced some software to manage the way that an internal system handled website requests. And we were chatting one day on the phone, and he said to me, I know you're interested in developing websites and the like. He said, take a look at this website Paper Select, and it'll give you some good ideas. This is a good solid website. And I was able to say, yep, I know, because I wrote it. He then said, look, if you ever want to leave teaching and move on, we'll give you all of our contracts.
Oh, wow.
And so, I handed my notice in, and 6 months later, we started AlphaQuad full-time. And so that's where it all started. And I do regret sometimes not being a teacher still, because being a teacher was great. But yeah, this has been a lot of fun as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, considering that it's been going since, I mean, what year would that have been? 1996, 97?
So 1998 is when we actually set up the company.
Yep.
2000 is when we incorporated, and I started doing it full time.
Right, okay. So I was born myself in 1998, so...
Don't.
So AlphaQuad and I are the same age. If you could get it down to a specific month, then we can work out which one's older. We could possibly share the birthday. It's
January.
See, I'm July 98, so there we go. Younger than AlphaQuad. So AlphaQuad, I think, is quite... I've always found it to be a really interesting name. I remember when there's like an earworm to it that I've always really loved. Can you share the name and what the meaning behind the name is?
Yes, I can, and this is a question I've been asked many, many times. And when I tell people the answer, it gets all manner of different responses. So, I'm a big sci-fi fan, and I'm looking around for a name, and at the time when we were starting up in business, it was important to have the letter A at the beginning, because anyone who put together a directory put it together in alphabetical order, and numbers just didn't work, although I did register a domain called 01 Creative, thinking, that's a really good way to get at the top of the list, but they come across as a little bit odd. So I needed an A. I wanted it to sound sound something scientific, something, because at the time we were all coding and mathematical thinking and coding and structured thought. It seemed to all go together. And being a sci-fi fan, it needed to be Star Trek.
Right.
And so Star Trek, the universe of Star Trek, without wishing to bore you or anyone who's listening to this, is divided into 4 quadrants. Voyager is in the Delta Quadrant,
yep.
And in that particular series they start referring to where it all started. Earth is in the Alpha Quadrant. So where it all started, Alpha Quadrant, AlphaQuad, sounds a bit scientific. It's got the letter A to start with. What's not to like?
Exactly. So, Star Trek question. Do you have a particular favourite series of it? Because I know that there's the franchise is inexplicably huge. So, is there a particular iteration of it that you love?
I want to say that's like picking your favourite child, but not at all. I like the Deep Space Nine series, probably the best.
Right. Okay.
That got some meaty stuff in it. There's some interesting storylines and some good characters. But I really do like all of them.
Well, that's good. I was more of a Next Generation fan when I was younger. As long as I'm remembering correctly, that's the one with Patrick Stewart in it.
It was with Patrick Stewart,
and
and
the right one.
Such a fan of Patrick Stewart that when someone came for interview the one time, he looked a little bit like a young Patrick Stewart. And as soon as he walked in the door, I thought, I'm sorry, but yeah, we've got to impose.
I'm having him.
Absolutely.
So something that I wanted to ask specifically, I wanted to get a little bit into clients that you've had. And I wonder, what did it mean for you personally and for AlphaQuad as a company when you landed your first client as a whole?
Okay. First client or first big client?
Well, I suppose they're quite different. I would say first client... I'll ask both. First client first.
Okay, first client. Well, that was interesting because it was the father of one of my pupils at school, and this is one of the pupils who used to come to my computer club after hours, and his father got interested in what we were doing, and his father ran a restaurant which was just around the corner from where I lived. And so we started producing a website for him, and the idea of actually making money at something that had just been a hobby up to that stage was really wonderful, because I had a salary all my life, and all of a sudden I had money coming in outside of a salary, and that was really good. That was fun. The actual production process itself was a little fraught. The restaurant had a large bus stop in front of it, not one of the stick bus stops, one of the big shelters, and the guy who ran the restaurant decided he didn't like the look of the bus shelter, so asked if I could remove it using art packages and stuff. And so I spent probably 2 or 3 days with a cloning tool and a day to be Photoshop trying to remove all elements of this bus stop, and we did that, and we got all the menus in place, and it looked fantastic. And he still owes me half of the money.
Oh.
So I learnt an awful lot on that one. I learnt that, okay, sometimes this wonderful, exciting thing that we were doing can get a bit mundane, and there was a hard reality to the financial side of things. But it was a good website.
Well, that's good. But, that must sting. He still owes you that money. That's
I don't know.
All these years
I might
later.
chase him down. Yeah, it's how many years ago is that now? 26 years ago.
At some point you just have to cut your losses and go, it's fine. We've moved on to... Well, you have moved on to bigger and better. Now,
yes, the
big client.
The first big client. So, the context is we were building, and when I say we, I mean me. I was building websites for small to medium-sized companies, small restaurants around the corner, a guy who produced wooden boxes. Our pricing structure was very much bronze, silver, gold. I cringe a little bit when I look back to those days. And we were, I'll skip figures, and because even after all these years, I don't really want to say how much clients were paying. But suffice to say that, let's wind it back a little bit. So where did we come across this big client? And this, to this day, I find fascinating. We were invited randomly by someone to attend an Amway meeting. Now, most people won't know what Amway is nowadays, I imagine, but it was described as multi-level marketing, or more unkindly, pyramid selling. It was, although I think it was actually a very reputable organisation and taught myself and my wife an awful lot about business. Amway was considered sort of the base, the bottom end of doing anything in business at all.
Yeah.
So we'd actually tried this a few years before. We'd had some fun. We'd learned some things. We made a little bit of money out of it. But we received an invite from someone we didn't really know to come to a business meeting to talk about starting your own business. No mention of Amway at all. We turned up to the meeting, and it was very obvious what it was from the very first sentence, because I'd been delivering this type of meeting a few years before. Now, we had a choice there. We could have said, oh my goodness, no, we've done this, we don't want to do it again, and walked out. But we didn't. We're polite people and they seemed nice. And so at the end, when they tried to involve us in their little network, we said, well, thank you very much. It was really interesting. It's not for us, but we appreciate the time, you've taken to sit here and try and, create something for us. And that was it. We went home. Next day, we got a phone call from this lady, Sue, who said, you don't know this, but I work for an advertising agency in Birmingham. We've just had one of our clients ask us a question that we can't answer. And the client was Calagas, and the question was, why isn't our e-commerce website working at the moment? Now, Sue worked for an agency who had no idea about digital marketing, website design, all of that sort of stuff. So I said, yeah, fine, I'll give her a call. Gave the lady over at Calagas a call. She invited me in the next day. I turned up. She asked some questions, I gave some answers, we got on really well, and we're still really good friends to this day. So thank you, Rachel, it was a really good meeting. Rachel sat there and said, look, I'm really sorry, it looks like this is going to work, I like your ideas, but we've hardly got any money left. We've spent most of our budget, we've just got a little bit left over. And I'm thinking, oh, fantastic, that's going to be, bottom end, that's going to be a bronze package now. She asked the question, so how much is it going to cost? What should we do? Rather than saying it's the bronze package, it's this amount of money, at which point she would have probably shown me the door quite quickly, I said to her, well, what have you got? And we'll see what we can do with it. And she told me, I nearly fell off my chair, because what they had spare was 10 times what our top package was, and we took it from there. Now, we could have, at that stage, we could have basically given her the standard top-level package and got paid an awful lot of money for it, but it seemed fairer, more ethical to actually spend my client's money, the way that we would normally have spent money for another client. So we did 10 times the amount of work. As a result, we ended up with bbq.co.uk working for Calagas, which drove over 3 million people a year through the website, became the biggest barbecue site in the UK, became the, fourth biggest barbecue website by visitors in the world. And we were competing with America and Australia and the like. It really took off. We had all manner of things coming through. But as a result of that, she looked at that and thought, I want more websites like that. Her colleagues looked at it and thought, we want more websites. And so we eventually ended up delivering 17 websites for Cala, the vast majority of which were market leaders.
Yeah.
And it also meant that because we had 17 websites, all 17 in the top 20 of Google, including all top 10 positions for the phrase LPG, which was a bit of a coup at the time and drove loads of traffic, and it worked blisteringly. And we retained Calagas for, 11, 12 years as a client. And so we went from a small number of SMEs to having a national name as our main client and being their sole digital agency for many, many years, which was really good for us because it allowed us, with their budget level, to try new digital marketing techniques. And so the stuff we developed then, we're still using today. Some very effective things that work exceptionally well.
Oh, wow. I think something that I've always found really significantly appealing about AlphaQuad and working here is the client retention. And clients are very happy when they're with us. And I think as much as, of course, we're going to sit here and toot our own horns about how wonderful we are, I think that is something that proves in the pudding effectively. People are happy when they're with us and they stay for a long time because we do a good job.
Yeah, I like to think so, absolutely. And we've been very lucky. We've got some phenomenally good clients.
Yeah.
And the word client, though, is interesting because we don't so much work for companies as people. And so when we worked with Calla, and so it was Rachel I was working with.
Yeah.
So Rachel, and then Sabrina, and then Paul, and all the various individuals within the company. And that's quite important because part of our role is to make sure that when we're working for our clients, we look at what's important, not just for the company that we're working for, but for the individuals that we're working for. And each individual is unique. They've got their own motivations, the things that they like, that they're good at, things they don't like. And very much what we're doing is we're fitting not just with the company and the company objectives, we're fitting with that person across the table for us.
Yeah.
And when you realise that, it makes working with them so much easier. And of course, they're all different, they're all unique, they're all wonderful in their own special way. And once we get that sorted, then life gets an awful lot easier and we're much more effective as a team, both the AlphaQuad people and the client-side people.
Yeah.
I should add on that one, by the way, that not only do we tend to retain clients for a long period of time, the clients, when they move on, the individual members of staff of the company, when they move on, they then tend to take us with them. And so the people I'm mentioning just there, those names I've mentioned, we're still working with. They've moved on in their careers to different companies and we've gone with them. We go with them because they know us, they trust us, they know we're going to do a good job for them.
Yeah, exactly. It goes to show that the level of care and attention that you put into specific people at specific workplaces and with specific clients, it does pay off in the long run. It's how you treat people does come back to you in the most philosophical sense of the term. So
it does.
It really does. John, I'd quite like to take you back to the mid-90s. What was digital marketing when you first started AlphaQuad, and kind of how does it compare to now? What was the landscape back in 1998?
It was a lot simpler and a lot more complex. So things were just starting. People are trying to work out what this was. What is the web? What can we do with it? And what did the landscape look like? Well, nowadays we're it's Google.
Yeah.
I mean, most of the work we do is with Google. We'll touch on Bing occasionally, but Google really came to the ascendancy. And I was able to watch that because when we started, Yahoo was the big player. Yahoo had this complex web portal that you went to with lots of stuff on it. You had people who were coming along on the outside and trying to build simpler portals, such as, let me see now, you've got AltaVista, Excite, Infoseek, Hotbot, Lycos, Ask Jeeves, and all of these people, and with the little Google coming in behind the scenes. One of the key things I was doing at the time to try and get our name out there was to do a search engine's relationship chart. And so I had these circles I was drawing on paper. The size of the circle was the size of the search engine, how many visitors that were coming through. And I was drawing lines between them to say, okay, who's sharing data with whom and what's the relationship, and is there a parent-child relationship with these things, or are they just got some sort of business deal going on there? And I used to update this on a sort of monthly to quarterly basis, and whenever I didn't, people would write in and complain because they wanted the latest information. But it was interesting because month by month, year by year, you could see that Google circle growing bigger and bigger and bigger and absorbing everything around it. And until eventually the rest of them just sort of effectively faded away completely. So that's what it looked like in terms of search engines. Now, in terms of how you actually produce websites, when I first started, you coded them. You had to sit down there and you had to type out lines and lines of code. You needed to understand HTML and all the other stuff that was associated with it. I mean, I look back and I think of some of the websites I was producing that way, and I cringe a little bit because we've got such more powerful tools now. But then you got Dreamweaver came in, which allowed you to do things an awful lot faster, and it was more of a graphical interface that you could put things together. Netscape allowed you to drag and drop things onto the screen really early on, and so it was really quite difficult in the early days to put things together. A website would take a long time to produce. Search engines were quite crude in the way that they ranked people. And so you could throw a keyword at a page an awful lot and you get a good ranking because you put the keyword on the page 200 times. You could build artificial links from a whole pile of other different websites and get a ranking boost as a result of it. I would like to emphasise we've never ever done that. Even in the early days, we didn't keyword stuff. We didn't try and put artificial links in there for one really good reason. It was very apparent early on that the worst thing that could happen to a website by using bad techniques was that it succeeded. Now, it seems like an odd thing. Why would that be the case? Because if you spend a lot of money, you put a lot of links in there, you stuff loads of keywords, you generate ridiculous amounts of content on there, which isn't particularly good for anyone, why would success be a problem? Success is going to be a problem because if things take off, if things work, and in the early days when things work, they work really significantly well.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had websites that have taken people from getting along, running a decent business to retiring in a year. It's actually happened in the early days. Things just seem to work very, very quickly. So if something works quickly, and let's say you're selling a particular product, all of a sudden the orders start coming in. So you've got to start making more product, and you've got to up your capacity to generate all the kit, all the stock that you need. You need to have more people coming in to actually run all of that. You might need bigger premises. All these things that are associated with success. Anyone running a business will know when things start to succeed, it becomes expensive. You have to start taking risks.
Yeah.
Now, the website that's succeeding there, because of techniques that really were a little bit dodgy and that Google was actively seeking to make ineffective because you were acting against Google's interests there. Google wants to rank the very best websites at the top, the websites that give you the most information, good products, do all the things that Google wants. Now, Google's trying to stop you manipulating that, and it's very good at doing that. And so all of a sudden, your wonderful website built on shaky foundations is no longer effective. And all those people that are coming through, they disappear. And when the people disappear, then the number of sales you're making disappears. And all of a sudden, you fall off a cliff and you've got all this product, all this stuff, these wonderful premises, and you've got no one buying from you. And that's when it becomes a real problem. I think it was the Google's Florida update many, many years ago, which saw around about 10,000 businesses go out of business because Google had found a way of stopping a particular exploit. And lots of people were relying on it, and then it wasn't there any longer. So one of the worst things that can happen to you if you use inappropriate search engine optimization techniques is that you succeed, because Google are going to get you.
It's a double-edged sword, isn't it? There's a certain aspect to it where it's you're damned if you do, if you're damned if you don't. But I suppose it's all part of the risk. It's all part of the fun. It's all part of the quote unquote game of SEO.
It is, and it's part of our responsibility as an ethical agency to warn clients that no, this isn't going to work. This is going to be a problem. And clients have left because we didn't want to do certain things.
Yeah.
And almost inevitably it goes wrong.
Which the unpredictability of SEO, I think, can always be part of the most fascinating aspect of the job. It's you never know exactly what result you're going to get, which I think is part of the beauty of it. And in spite of the fact that it can sometimes be incredibly frustrating because you do want the best result, of course you want the best result, it can also then pose that aspect of I want to challenge myself with this and I want this to challenge me. Who can be on top of its toes just that little bit more.
It's a fascinating area, and SEO is what we founded the company around. And the reason we based on SEO is that to do SEO well, you've got to get everything right. And so obviously you've got to get your content right, you've got to get the keywords of the content. But if people aren't staying on the page, then it's really not going to count for anything. In the early days, people just left early. Nowadays, Google's looking at people's behaviour, and so Google sees people dwelling on web pages for decent amounts of time, and that's a ranking signal for it. So you've got to get your user engagement right, you've got to get your design right, you've got to think about what messages are coming across, you need to know that the technology behind the scenes is up to scratch, so you're serving the web pages quickly, which is another ranking factor. So everything goes into SEO. So if you get your SEO right, everything is right. So it seemed to be a really good thing for us to focus on in the early day, and you get your score straight away. I'm a big computer game fan, and in computer games, certainly the early ones, you got scores. And when it comes to search engine optimization, you've got your keywords that you know people are looking for, and you know what position you're at in the search engine, sort of.
Yeah.
Now that's the score, and you add all your keywords together, you add all these individual little scores together, you get the overall score. You get very quickly an idea of how well you're doing. Now, that's great from a motivation side of things, but it's also great from being able to see exactly how well you're doing. And so analytics, the number of organic visitors you're getting coming through, the number of visitors from a search engine who are coming through, the actual ranks you've got, to all the other metrics that flow from that, is a great way of determining, are you doing it right? Are you doing it wrong?
I think there's significantly more than people really realise that goes into it. And I think before I started working at AlphaQuad, I hadn't realised that SEO was as complex as it was. Friends of mine that work as copywriters and have spoken to me about it previously, there's always been an aspect of, okay, well, it's just content writing, and that's, how hard can that be? And the answer is actually quite hard at times. At times, quite easy, depends on the severity of the content. And at times, it's really challenging.
It's interesting because you say it's complex, and it's one of those weird things that's complex because of its simplicity.
Yeah.
At its base, if you want to rank well, you've got a keyword. You just need to make sure the page you've got talks about that keyword. It's in the title, it's in the body content.
Yeah.
Other terms that are related to that keyword, so latent semantic indexed phrases, are in there as well. So it's not that difficult to do, but it's not one keyword. When people look for something, they'll look for a plethora of different phrases, or sometimes just two phrases that are really common. So, for example, I mentioned Caligas already. When we joined them, they were wanting to optimize for the phrase gas cylinder, because that's what they call them inside. But nobody else was really calling them gas cylinders. Everyone was calling them gas bottles. And so a simple little change from one phrase to another phrase meant that we were able to increase, I think it was about 35%, the number of visitors that were coming through, because we were optimizing for the phrase that people were looking for. So that's really simple to start with. But then, again, to use the example of Cala, more people were looking for phrases associated with the use of the product than the product itself. And so people were looking for phrases associated with gas barbecuing, for weed burning, and that was a whole different problem. When I say weed burning, it is getting rid of the weeds in fields so that they can plant their crops. We got a lot of traffic for a slightly different use of that phrase. For driving forklift trucks, for heating homes. So when you look at building an SEO campaign, we needed to look at the motivation of the people who are wanting to use the product. What do they want to use it for? Talk about that, and you're naturally then getting the right sort of people. NFU Mutual, when we became their digital agency, we moved the focus away from insurance phrases and onto phrases that were associated. So, for example, horse insurance would be a key phrase, but yard security or horse tattoos or horse theft, those are phrases that were attracting more visitors who were very appropriate people for the product. And then if you stitch it all together properly, you find that all these sub-phrases, all these sub-ideas then allow you to promote the main phrase more effectively, and you become number one for that, which we did.
Wow. I think speaking with you, John, is... I've always found it to be both an incredibly intimidating thing, because it's just like, wow, this man really knows his stuff, and it makes me feel completely inferior at times as well. But it's also, there's just this dearth of knowledge that's just incredible to try and mine from. So it's part of the reason why I'm so excited to have you on today, just for that purpose alone. So It really is very exciting. So I
have to interrupt there. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
I'd say that there's a thing called the imposter syndrome, which most people will have heard about on this one. I've got it just as much as everybody else, because I'm sitting here talking into this microphone, saying these things, thinking to myself, yeah, there's people out there who know the other stuff as well, the extra stuff, and should I be mentioning that? And would I get challenged on that one? The nice thing about SEO is application of the simple things works really, really well. And that with all of digital marketing, especially SEO, the hardest thing in the world is to do it. Not to know about it, not to have fancy ideas, not to make it really complicated, simply to say, here's a keyword, here's horse insurance, I need to now start writing content. I need to now start putting other pages together to link to it. It's not complicated, you've just got to sit down and do it.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's really easy, and sometimes that's difficult. It's never difficult, well, for us, it's never difficult to produce the content. It's fairly straightforward. The difficult thing is making sure it fits with company objectives and the individual likes and dislikes of the person you're working for. And there's a whole range of things that you wouldn't have anticipated to start with, which will affect actually doing something and getting it done.
Yeah, which I find your take on imposter syndrome quite interesting. Something that when I was doing my master's degree, something that we had a whole lecture on the one day was imposter syndrome. And one of my arguments was the way that I combat imposter syndrome is to tell myself I deserve everything that I get, whether the good or the bad. And I find that really helps me kind of soothe any anxieties that I might then receive as a result of imposter syndrome. And some people find that quite a jarring statement. Some people find it quite a self-indulgent statement, but it's true. It's how I've best been able to avoid any sense of imposter syndrome, just with this sense of, you know what? I deserve everything that I get, and that's it's a really good life philosophy. And people that I've told it to think I'm absolutely mad, but I stand by it. So it's an interesting conversation to have. So imposter syndrome does affect us all, and it's how we can pursue and move on from it.
Well, I've been fortunate over the years because I've got to talk to a lot of very senior individuals. So senior people in the Foreign Office, MDs of very large companies, sat on a number of boards. I've helped out large organisations, and no matter what level you talk to people at, everyone's got it.
Yeah.
Everyone's slightly worried about it. And I would say in digital marketing more than most. Because most people tend to think there's some secret source somewhere else they don't really know about, and someone else has got a better handle on something. And over the years, one of the key things I've learned, like I said earlier, is that at its heart, it's really simple. People make it more complicated, but as with anything, it's always about people.
I almost feel sometimes with digital marketing, there's a certain fake it till you make it sort of approach, which is just hope for the best, get on with it, and if it works, it works, and if it doesn't, then we'll try again. So it's
For many, many years, our company motto was, how hard could it be? And
the answer is quite.
Well, this is it. To start with, it was a good motto, and that served us well. But every now and then, we really found out how hard it could be.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can be very hard.
But that's just the same with anything, though, isn't it? I suppose with your work as a teacher, how hard could it be?
Yeah.
Learning how to drive, how hard could it be?
That's right.
Learning how to do SEO, how hard could it be?
Yeah.
The answer is very.
Yeah.
At times. Sometimes not at all. John, I'd quite like to move on now. So, obviously, with the clients that you've had over the years, I think that being that you've been around the best part of nearly 3 decades, how have you found that in that time that client expectations have changed? Because obviously there's been this with new advents and new technologies and in differing ways that people do things. How have you found that expectations have changed? Yeah,
that's interesting, because when I started, it really was very much, I need a website because my competitor has got a website.
Right.
Or my son's told me about this. It sounds like a good idea. I think I'll get one. People didn't really expect websites to be that important. I mean, even the advocates were thinking it's just part of my marketing mix and I'll add it on there. And consequently, not a great deal of work was done with sites. There wasn't a great deal of competition. The competition you did have wasn't particularly good. So it was what's the expression? I think it's that in our business, you don't have to be very good to be excellent. Now, That slowly started changing. It started changing because people saw the results. All of a sudden, people were finding that the web was bringing in an awful lot of traffic, an awful lot of business. When people were sitting down and saying to their customers, well, where did you find us? Which is a really rare thing for a company to do. Almost nobody does this. When they did, they found that people were saying, oh yeah, I saw you on the web, I saw you on Google and the like. And because digital marketing is something that apparently is easy to measure, it actually isn't as easy as people think it is, but apparently is easy to measure, and your standard brochure or your advert was very difficult to measure the results that were coming in, people started to pay a great deal more attention to the whole thing. So the biggest thing that's changed over the years is people now take it very, very seriously.
Yep.
Well, most people do in most sectors. There are some sectors where they are a few years or a few decades behind other sectors. I shall name no names.
No, yep.
But we do find now that it is something where people they're not just doing it, they're not just ticking a box, they're not just choosing an agency, they're choosing the best agency.
Yep.
They want to know the differences between the agencies and what value added they can bring to the whole process. That's one big thing. The other significant change is the way things are done. I mean, earlier on I was talking about how we had to code everything from scratch. Nowadays we have so many tools to make life easier. I'm not entirely sure that fundamentally the products are that much better. Now, not with the really early days, definitely better than the really early days. But my colleague Tim, who's going to be recording a podcast later on, he is really good at putting together code and to actually putting together systems that people will be able to use effectively. Now, at that level, at Tim's level, yeah, it hasn't improved very much. What has improved is the speed at which we can do things. Yep. So, and I know we'll talk about AI at some point in the future. In the same way as AI means that we can do things an awful lot faster, using the website development tools and marketing tools means we can do things an awful lot faster. So, in the early days, if I wanted to know ranking positions, what I would do, I would go to the search engine, I would type in the actual phrase, and I would see where we were on the search engine. And I would do that for every single phrase, at least weekly, going through there, and that would take an age. If you're talking about 100, 200, 300 keyword phrases, it would take forever. Nowadays, there's a variety of packages. We use Ahrefs, and it does it for us automatically, and it produces lovely graphs for us automatically. Yeah. And so what took me hours and hours and hours is done now in a few minutes. When it comes to creating a website, we transitioned from a variety of quite complex tools to a very simple tool, WordPress, when it got to the stage where it was producing phenomenally good websites, and it was doing things as well as we could do it through using more complex tools or using standard coding. We save time. So the biggest change that really happened in terms of what we're doing on our side of the table is the tools we've got nowadays are so good, so good. Sometimes with stupid names, thinking of Screaming Frog as one of our best tools.
Yep.
But an Ahrefs, I'm fairly sure I know what it stands for, but I don't think anyone listening to this will know what it stands for. So I don't know if that answers your questions, but I mean, so there's been lots of changes, things have moved on, but the interesting thing over all the years is fundamentally nothing has changed at all. Yeah. It's that expression, the more things change, the more they stay the same. And fundamentally, we're still doing exactly the same thing. Yeah. All we're trying to do is to try to make sure that our clients, potential customers, find out about them in a positive manner and then go on to engage with that client. And to do that, I mean, our approach has always been, let's give Google what it needs in terms of adverts, in terms of organic content, and let's make sure that our client, that the customers understand that our client is an actual expert and an honest, ethical broker of whatever they do. If you get that right, then it works. Interestingly, Google nowadays talks about EAT, expertise, authoritativeness, trustworthiness, as the key things you've got to build into a website. And I'm looking at that thinking, well, we were doing that in the last century.
Yeah.
In 1996 we were trying to do that and try to build content, and we were trying to build really good barbecue content and really good insurance content. And so it's almost as if sometimes it feels that Google's caught up with us.
Yeah.
Because it made sense to do it. And Google, I think, has just developed, they wanted to do it all along, but nowadays I think they've got the tools, they've developed the systems that allow them to do it.
Yeah, Google have finally developed the tools with which they are able to penalise us to their heart's content. Speaking specifically about changes within digital marketing, what I think that as much as you say that as much as things have changed, they've stayed the same, I wonder, have there been any kind of significant pivots that you have had to make within AlphaQuad to make in response to industry changes?
Oh, so many. The big ones have been associated, I think, with the technology. Like I say, the digital marketing side of things, the ethos has always remained the same. But for example, obviously when we went from coding to using tools to put the code together, that was a fairly significant change. But it felt a very natural thing because you still saw the code. The tool was producing the code that you were looking at. You were still interacting with the code. Perhaps the biggest one that we faced was over maybe a 5-year period when prior to WordPress, we saw the big tools were large, they were cumbersome, they were clunky. I mean, you think using full-blown Microsoft products, full-blown Adobe products, where there's so many options, there's so many things to do because they're producing one piece of software to suit everybody. The tools that were emerging were very much like that. The vast majority of it you never needed. The actual complexity of the tool became a hindrance to using it. So we thought, we could produce something better than that. And a colleague joined me who was a very, very good developer. And he had this desire, this need to produce a much better piece of software that produced websites. In those days, we weren't really using the term content management system very much, but it was an early content management system. He sat down and coded and put things together and tested things out for 12 to 18 months, and that was effectively most of what he was doing. At the end of the day, he came out with a content management system which was phenomenal. It was really, really good. It did everything we wanted, and it only did what we wanted. And if we wanted something else, we'd plug a module in, but it was good. It covered the organic side of things, the visual side of things. It was easy to deploy. The people who used it found it really, really easy to use. But you can sense there's a but coming here now.
Yep.
But we were asked one particular question. And the question we were asked was, well, if AlphaQuad ever got into trouble, what's our position? Clients would be saying. So if you disappear, where's the support for it? And what do we do from then on? Now, we try to get around that by saying, the intellectual property is with you. Yeah. You own the product, and we've always had that. Whenever we do work for people, it's their work. We retain a royalty-free license to use any techniques in the future, but what we've built for people is theirs. So we had that, but still it wasn't enough. And we found ourselves in a situation where we quite heavily invested in producing a product that was, we felt, a market-leading product at the time, but we couldn't effectively sell it. We deployed it on a number of websites, and they were phenomenal, and they were great. And 15 years after that product was retired by us, these websites were still stable, and they were fine, and people used them still very, very happily. We were then facing the one side, the big boys, who got the marketing budget, and the expression, no one ever gets sacked for choosing Microsoft. We also then had this early version of WordPress coming through and started to gain ground, which wasn't as good as what we felt we'd done, but there was an awful lot more people doing it, an awful lot more people using it, and it got a momentum. So we found ourselves, we'd gone along with a particular technological change which made sense, and we'd succeeded at it, but we had to stop it completely and reverse direction and recognise that there were things out there that were probably a better business choice for our clients than what we were producing. And so we pulled the plug on the whole thing, and that was a big change. that was fairly significant, and it cost a lot of money to do that, but yeah. those are the breaks.
Yeah, I suppose that comes with the territory, doesn't it? It's if it's that unpredictability like we discussed, it's you never know what could go horribly wrong, and hopefully nothing ever does, but you have to have that plan in place to make sure that if something does go horribly wrong, you can fix it.
And in this case, it went horribly right.
I suppose it's better to have things go horribly right than horribly wrong. It's a much nicer, cleaner statement to be able to say.
I'm not entirely sure which one costs less or more.
I suppose horribly wrong, because you can start from scratch. If it goes horribly right, then you can, I don't know, you can pick up the pieces and try and start again with some aspects, but then you're kind of left over with bits that might work and bits that might not. And
looking back, I think that's the only really big one that went not horribly wrong. It just, it was the wrong direction for a while. We've been very fortunate over the years. And in terms, going back to the question of whether we had to make big changes, whether we had to reverse our positions, very, very infrequently. Another big one, actually, of totally different context, is that as AlphaQuad was starting to succeed, I got this sort of thought in my head that, oh my goodness, look how good I am at this. I've got a company, it's working. I used to be a teacher, now I've started a business, and that's going great. Let's do another one. And seemed to be sensible at the time. I thought I had the Midas touch. And so I started another company called About Organics, completely different. The idea was to promote organic products.
Yeah.
Before it became fashionable in the supermarkets to talk about organic products, and all manner of things were working with that. And then I was invited to talk to organic pineapple producers in the Bahamas, and I was going to get flown out by the Foreign Office to advise. And I was going to be I was booked in to talk about organic beef production in Scotland. And this is all on the back of having written some pages on websites. But no, it was actually it was growing. It was becoming a serious thing at the time.
Yeah.
But that was one where I felt that, oh my goodness, I can do this. I can have multiple businesses, and I couldn't. I've got no more Midas touch than anybody else.
Yeah.
And it became very apparent that dividing my attention in two different companies was not a good idea. And
No.
we both started going the wrong direction. And I realised that, no, I've got to focus on things. And I was just actually giving some advice to a nephew of mine who wants to start a business, and he came along and sat next to me yesterday and said, I know what I've got to do is try loads of different things and see which one works. I said, stop, no, really don't try loads of different things, because you'll spend 10 minutes on each one, and you need to spend a lot more than 10 minutes to actually make a success of anything. And so that was a really big change in direction for us, to running multiple companies and with other ideas, ready to come on board, and to say, no, we're just going to focus on exactly what we're really good at, and that was digital marketing.
Yeah, I suppose it's good that before you allowed yourself to be blinded and swallowed by blind hubris, it was quick, rein myself back in. Back to AlphaQuad, quick.
Yeah,
let's go.
We used to look at the company chart. It was always going up. Everything always went up, and we assumed that was what was always going to happen.
Well, of course, why would you ever assume that it would not look like that? If it's always looked at on that up and up and up scale, why would you ever think that it could come even slightly down? It's
the left-hand side of the peak on the graph looks like a trend until you go over the peak.
Yeah, at which point it's a very steep decline.
Fortunately, we've never really had a steep decline.
No.
We've had the potential to have steep declines. I mean, when you lose a big client, and you inevitably always lose big clients, something's going to happen. Usually, a new marketing director comes in, and that's the kiss of death to any contract, as anyone in marketing or other associated services will tell you. It's difficult to survive a big change at the top. But yeah, it happens, but we've managed to weather them all and keep going.
You've outlasted them all. Going back to kind of specific sizes of companies, has there been a particular size of companies that you preferred working with over the years, whether it's SMEs or large companies, corporations? Where do you stand?
No, that's a really interesting question, because depending on where you are at any one moment of the year, then you'll have a definite answer. But if you, depending on what's happening, but if you look at all of the years that we've been in business, it's one of those non-answers. There's positives and negatives to it all. The advantage of working with SMEs is you are really directly involved in that business. You know the people to whom it's going to make a massive difference. You're working for the owners of companies, and that feels different to actually working for a company. So an owner of a company, the way they look at their company is typically very different to the way an employee looks at a company. So you do feel you're part a bigger part of their company's success when things work, and they usually do. However, working for corporates, working for larger clients, gives you the scope to do an awful lot more, which is all down to budget. An SME typically will not have anywhere near the budget a corporate client will. Now, that means you can do more of certain things when you're working for a corporate. So that gets intellectually more interesting. So you can try things. So as I mentioned, when we worked with Cala, their budget was sufficient for us to allow us to develop digital marketing techniques and to come up with ideas that would only really be possible for someone who's got enough money to afford to buy our time to make that idea a reality. And so that worked really well. That's had the knock-on effect now is that once you know something, once you develop a technique, well, you can apply it everywhere. And so we're finding now that we are applying techniques that we developed with corporates with all of our SME clients, and that works well. That works really well indeed.
So I find that this next question, it's I've been really looking forward to asking you this. So regardless of company size, you're going to get an unusual request from somebody. Now, have you found that there has been a particularly unusual request that is worth note?
Yeah, so I'm quite a conservative person, and so it's quite difficult to even mention this, certainly when I'm being recorded. So I'm sitting there in my office, and the phone rings, and it comes through to me. It's a piece of new business, and well, to cut a long story short, there was a gentleman and his girlfriend who wanted to start a business, and they had a video camera. And if I sort of cut the story fairly short around there, we politely declined. We said what you need to think about if you're doing this are the following factors, and you probably need someone to explain the following things to you, but we don't think it's your style of business, your choice of sector is necessarily going to fit with what we feel comfortable helping to work with. That was the one. We were also approached in a similar vein, but along the same lines, by a producer of, I think it was Channel 4, I'm not sure. But anyway, producer of a programme called The Naked Office, where the idea was to get people to feel so comfortable working together that they could do it naked. Oh. And no, that was not going to be us. No. I think I would have lost a lot of staff very quickly. What amazed me is that I think the programme actually got made. I didn't see it ever, but I think it actually filmed and people were prepared to do that.
Oh, it was retooled into Naked Attraction. It was... Oh my God. Well, thank you for sharing that unusual request. I think that, maybe I'm a little bit more liberally minded, but even I wouldn't feel one of, even me personally, absolutely not. No. So what has been, I'm kind of wrapping up, we're on to the last two questions of the morning now. What has, for you, John, been the most effective form of marketing that you can think of that you've been involved in?
It's a good question. And the answer is, the answer's in a number of parts. Search engine optimization is what we have always been very good at. It's always been a passion of mine. I've really enjoyed doing it over the years. And so that would be the obvious answer, because break it down, any of our contracts where we're engaged with SEO, search engine optimization, pound for pound, it's the most effective thing you could be doing, certainly over the long term. Not over the short term, but over the long term. It's one of those things that just keeps on giving. You invest some time in it, you get some good content in place that's evergreen, it's not going to go out of date anytime soon. You keep getting results from that, provided you do some very basic things. However, that's not the real answer. The real answer, certainly in digital marketing, and I believe also in marketing in general, is that everything works. No matter what you do, it will work. And the more things you do, the better it becomes. There's a phrase, there's this thing associated with the idea of a gestalt, where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. That really applies in marketing. All of those individual things you do, provided that they fit together well, will become greater than the individual value of those components. So the answer is, what type of marketing works the best? It all does, with the proviso that you need to link it together. And so in simple campaign terms, if you have a campaign about a particular idea, every single one of your digital marketing channels should focus on that idea, and they should all bolster one another. But that should go to the greater whole of all those individual campaigns should also fit together on all the various channels. I won't turn this into a lecture about the component parts and how they fit together, but yeah, the answer is everything works, but not necessarily to the same degree.
That is a fascinating answer, I think. But then what do you do? How have you found and how have you managed things when things haven't worked?
Right, well, the key to that is analytics.
Yeah.
You noticed I was hesitant earlier on about analytics, and we might expand on that in a second or a different podcast. But you can look at Google Analytics and look at the various channels. You can look at the organic channel, the paid channel, you can look at the referrals channel. You can see where the visitors are coming from. So you know if you've just been running a 6-month, 12-month organic SEO campaign, you can see that graph going up. You see more and more people coming through. Paid campaigns more immediately. You can instantly see what's going on with these things as they go through. So that is probably the first thing that you need to do. So you know what's working, you know what's not working. You can look at the results and say, you know what, we've just spent £2,000 on a particular campaign, £50,000 on a particular campaign, and we can see the number of people coming through. So you get a rough feel for whether something's working or not working. Yeah. There's a big however on this. And that big however, for anyone who's into Google Analytics, is aware of what it is there's a multi-channel element. So a short while ago I said that all forms of marketing work. Well, you tend to find that when you're running any campaign at all, and you've got multiple channels that are going through there, that it's not as simple as, oh look, I've just made a sale. What was the last point of contact? It was a paid advert, therefore that paid advert is working really well. If you scratch the surface a little bit more, you find, certainly for considered high-value purchases, you're looking at a situation where there were multiple interactions to lead to that conversion, to lead to that sale or that engagement with the client. So it could well be that someone saw an advert to start with because you're pushing it to them.
Yeah.
They recognise the advert, they saw the brand name, they saw the name of the company, they then go away and talk to their wife, their colleagues, they mull it over, then come back and think, hang on, what was that again? What was that advert? It may well be the adverts have stopped running, but they remember the brand name, they type the brand name, and all of a sudden that's an organic visit. So we have a paid visit and then an organic visit. And that person then is not necessarily the person who's making the decision. So what they then do, they actually send the link to that company's website to one of their colleagues. That then becomes a direct visit, and it becomes a broken direct visit, so you couldn't even track it. It gets very muddy. So even at a simple level, multiple interactions will lead to a conversion, and you need to look at all of those interactions. So the paid was important to raise awareness, but then you go on and you need the organic position there as well, so that someone can find you again.
Yep.
And so you can see now why I'm saying that all of these channels are important. They all contribute to these complex user journey of the individual. And whenever I'm talking about user journeys, it's in the plural, because there's no such thing as getting the user journey right. It's getting the user journey is right. It all has to go together.
Wonderful. There's no short answer to anything. And I think that's because that would imply that there is a one-word answer to something. So many different solutions are, and there's so many different ways in which to solve these issues and to counteract these problems that people might experience in digital marketing. So I think that this has just been a very interesting conversation to have. So, John, this brings me on to my final question of the morning. Thank you so much. You've been a wonderful guest. And I wanted to talk about something now that is completely unrelated to AlphaQuad. And I wanted to ask you, has there been in your lifetime a marketing campaign that you have looked at and gone, wow, they have pulled that off really well. They have done a really good job of that. And it could be anything from, it could have been a film that's been coming out, it could be a TV show, it could be a new drinks brand, it could be whatever it could possibly be. Has there been anything that's really stuck out to you?
That's an interesting question, because like everybody else, I'm a consumer of marketing.
Yeah.
And there have been things that stick out significantly. And the simple answer is, well, things like the Old Spice horses in the wave advert, because that was artistically wonderful. Not entirely sure what those horses had to do with smelly water.
Yep.
And the other favourite of mine, well, two of the favourites were Aardman Animations. Was it? Oh, what was it for? Was it for British Gas? It had the puppets talking. It was people just talking generally about a topic, and that was animated by Aardman Studios.
The Creature Comforts.
Creature Comforts, that's the one.
Yeah.
Now again, with that one, I've just struggled to understand who that was, to remember who that was actually for. But I remember the advert. I hesitate to say that the most impactful advert, and this would be for gentlemen of a certain age, would be a Cadbury's Flake advert, but we really shouldn't go beyond that.
Yeah, I know the advert, John.
Not really appropriate nowadays.
John, that wraps us up for this today. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been really insightful and really interesting, and it's been wonderful to have you on. So thanks very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Brilliant. And thanks so much for listening, everybody, and we will see you in the next episode. Thank you very much. Goodbye.